there are so many students who are there, who are going through the visa process, and they're getting their visa approved. But there are also students who, who are struggling with very small things. Like they're struggling with slot booking. They don't know the right sources to, prepare for their visa interview. They're giving mock interviews to random people, and they're like, they're giving wrong judgment, and it's affecting your confidence. So this is which is why we have tied up with ex visa officers like Sanjay sir is here today with us, to help you prepare for your F1 visa interview, right? So yeah, without any further ado, let's move ahead to the session. Hello Sanjay sir, welcome to yet again, welcome to the visa webinars organized by Zol. We are thrilled to have you here, and excited to learn from you today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mansi, and thank you, Zol, for organizing series of these kind of webinars, which are helping students to understand and cut down on the noise that what's happening around, what's in store for them. So I'm sure, like other sessions, this session would also contribute towards their confidence and also, provide them information and, bust that myth that what's happening around. So I have a little presentation, so I'm going to go through that presentation first, and then we can, take. Okay. So today what we're going to do is I'll be talking about how to prepare for your visa interview. In order to start the presentation, I want to get into a little bit of context that these are the numbers that happened last year. We talked about November of 19 of 2024. The entire, numbers have really jumped from the past lot of years. I mean, the context is like, if there were close to about more than 300,000 students, those who applied and got the visas, that means the visa appointments were available. All right. So please understand that, the American Embassy also understands the number of students going to the US and the number of slots they have to release. However, when you start your process, it's overwhelming. There's so much of noise around the social media that there are no dates available or the dates would open up and finish off in a couple of minutes. The whole idea of this conversation that we're having today is to inform you that you would be getting your appointments, you know, relatively easier. So please don't stress. So the enrollment in the US, we talk about November of 2024, had increased by 300%. And the students, those who went maybe in 24 or 23 or 22, are still in the US and they're doing their OPTs, right? So the current news that you're seeing that, a lot of students are being sent back or they have to, their OPTs are canceled. Currently, that's not true. There were a couple of students who had, kind of overstayed or did not follow the right kind of regulations. They went into a problem, but then again, they went to the respective courts, they filed the cases, and the court, overruled it. They're still in the US and still working on their OPTs. So first is like, all this myth that is coming around, all this news, you have to first understand that if your grades are going down, then school will take action. If your, attendance is going down, then of course it has to be reported. Otherwise, if students are taking care of their attendance, their grades, they're studying well, I don't see any problem at all happening in the US. So here we'll be talking about getting the I-20 and starting your process. So make sure that you have a passport which is valid for 6 months from the day you enter the US, right? It should not be, 6 months from the day you leave the US or when your program ends. Your passport should be valid for 6 months at least. So when you get your I-20, then you have to start filling your visa form called DS-160. So DS stands for Department of State. The I-20 actually is coming from the Immigration and Department of Homeland Security. So that's how everything gets interconnected, right? And we'll also talk about the service fees, which is also a very important part of the entire process, right? So when you're talking about the financial papers that are sent for the admission process, and there's a huge difference between when you go in for your visa process. So the financial documents that you send to the university, they are looking at the balance certificate from the bank or an education loan or a combination of these two, which matches the I-20 amount. Your living expense and your tuition fees should match up the I-20 amount that you have a balance here or an education loan. That is to satisfy the immigration and the Department of Homeland Security that the student who's coming in has enough funds to support his education. However, when you're going in for your visa interview, the officer's objective is very different because he's looking at the visa law. And the visa law says very clearly that students must show that they have financial ties to the home countries as well. So, what are your parents doing? Do they have annual income which is coming in? Do they have savings, investments? Do they own properties or not? Right? So, availability versus financial strength are two different things. So, make sure that you understand the difference between the I-20 documents that you send and the documents that you have to carry when you go in for your visa interview. Now, when you talk about financial documents, this question also tells the officer that you have social ties to your home country. When you say that my parents are going to fund me, right? So that shows you have social ties to your home country. It could be the funding could be coming from you because let's say that you've been working, you've been saving. It could be from your parents, your fathers, your sibling, right? And your grandparents all collectively can also sponsor you when you go in for your visa interview. So once again, the visa officer is looking at the financial strength and your financial and your social ties, not just the availability of funds. So make sure, even if you mention this on your DS 160, because on the DS 160, you can only choose one person, whether it's going to be an institution, whether it's going to be your father's name or your mother's name. However, even if you mention that on your DS 160, make sure that you carry all the financial papers from your family to show not only your social ties, but also the financial strength that they have here in India. All right. Now, when you talk about documents, what documents you need to carry? If your parents are into business, then make sure that you carry the business documents, which could be the GST registration or the registrar of the company's registration, right? Their tax returns for the last 3 years, right? If they have investments like fixed deposits, shares, bonds, mutual funds. If your parents are working, then their salary slips, and then copies of property papers. Now, you don't have to get the property evaluated, or if it's in a regional language, you don't have to get the translation done. You just have to carry those documents in support of your application, right? Like in the video, the student, you know, informed that when she went for the interview lasted only for about 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Sometimes the officers don't see the documents, but what if they want to see documents? In order to support that, you must carry your financial papers and relevant documents. It's the officer's prerogative either to not see the documents or ask you to submit those documents. So make sure that you carry those documents when going in for your visa interview, right? Also, because you're going for your studies, you also need to carry your education documents like your school certificates, your college degree, and your test scores. If you've just completed your class 12th, then take a course completion certificate or a bona fide student from your class. If the results are out, you can carry it, take a online print, and you can go to your school and get it certified. College degree, if you have it, fantastic. If not, then provisional degree. If not, then a bona fide student or a course completion certificate with all your 6 semester mark sheets, right? If you've taken any GRE, GMAT, or an SAT, or an IELTS, or a TOEFL, you can take a screenshot of that score and carry it when you go in for your visa interview, right? So if you've been working, right? Let's say somebody graduated in 2021, so he would have an employment letter. If he's currently working, salary slip for the last 3 months. And if you have resigned, then your relieving letter as well. If you are currently working, then you don't have to resign. It is only if you've already resigned in the last job, then you can carry the relieving letter as well, right? Now, if we talk about the visa interview, so interview is interaction between two people, right? So when we are interacting, so there could be a miscommunication if you don't understand what is required by the other person who wants to listen to the answer, right? So the visa officers have structured very generic questions, right, which are relevant to each program or each category of visa. However, he's expecting that you are providing them relevant information voluntarily, which is your answer, not what you've heard from somebody or what you've heard from a social media, right? So the most important thing is that you need to create your own story. You must know why you want to go and study in America, right? Not that what your friend told the visa officer, right? You need to understand your career objectives. Based on that, if you've looked at the program, right, and the university, and you know what the industry is looking at, then you can simply give an answer by connecting these dots, right? So broadly, if I say the student visa laws say that anyone who's applying for a visa, the officer must consider that person as a potential immigrant, right? And until proven otherwise, he will not accept your application. Okay? So he believes that if anyone who's going to the US may not return back to the home country unless the student has shown his intentions of returning back. So when you talk about intentions, so he's asking you generic questions, but there he also wants to know what are your professional goals, right? Do you know where this program will take you? How important it is for you to upgrade your skills? What are the job options and opportunities in India, right? Then, of course, your social ties, who's sponsoring you? What are your parents doing, right? And then your financial ties, because most of the time you go there and somebody would stay back to, work and contribute towards his family growth financially. So make sure that you are addressing all these three issues during the visa interview, right? So it is very apparent there are two kinds of students applying for visas. One, those who want to go to the US, and the other are those who want to go and study in the US, right? If you understand this statement, then the visa officer also understands exactly this, right? So how does he differentiate? By asking these kind of questions, why do you want to go and study in the US? Why this particular college? How will you fund yourself? What will you study there? What are your future plans, right? So this is where he tries to figure out your intent. Okay. Now, a student who wants to go to the US may have only applied to a very low ranked university, which does not have a ranking. He does not understand why has he chosen this particular college. He's not sure what program he wants to go and study there. How will that resonate with his career objectives? If a person is not able to articulate these answers, then the officer is thinking that this person is not a credible student. Whereas the person who really wants to go and study in the US would understand the program, he would understand the subjects that he's enrolled for. He would understand how would that, actually help him improve his skill sets to achieve his career goals and how would he progress in his career, right? So let's understand when you go in for your visa interview, there are close to about 600, 700 people appearing for an interview. So the officer is interviewing a whole lot of people. A person who's going for business, a person who's going to attend a seminar, a person who wants to go and do his rotations for his USMLE exams, a student who wants to go and study aerospace engineering, a student who wants to do an MBA, right? And suddenly there's a person, who wants to go and attend a funeral. So it's the entire spectrum is very wide. So when you go in for the visa interview, the officer would have only 2 or 3 minutes. And the thing is that he doesn't know you, right? In that 2 minutes, he wants to understand your situation, not what your friend or your relative had told the visa officer when he qualified for a visa interview. So it is important that you understand your goals, your objectives, your storyline, and provide that relevant information voluntarily. All right. So now what happens is like, because of the social media, because of, so many counselors, so many, independent consultants, there's a whole lot of noise which is happening around, you know. So it gets a little confusing for a student to understand how do I actually make my pitch, right? So it is very important to understand your story. So when I say your story, so that exactly what the officer wants to know. So when he says, why do you want to go and study in this question? The officer wants to know, what have you studied here in India, right? What are you currently doing? Let's say that you're working, right? And then how will this education help you? If you're able to connect these dots, then it becomes your story. Otherwise, the answer is very generic because most of the time, the students would go and say, sir, I want to go and study in America because US education is very practically oriented, it is globally recognized, the labs are wonderful. All that is generic, right? A doctor who's going into studying masters in public health would give the same answer. A person who wants to go and do an MBA would give the same answer. But if you want to differentiate, then you have to talk about saying that I'm a doctor and I've been practicing for X number of years. I want to get into masters in public health because I can then connect with larger crowd. I want to start working on the curate, not the curative aspect, but at the preventive aspect of the medicine. Then the officer understands he identified a problem and he wants to find a solution, right? So just don't go and give generic answers. It is important, like I said, to create a clear storyline. Like I said, I want to do an MPH because I want to get into the preventive aspect of the medicine, right? And that's how you got to articulate your answers, which would then connect with your professional goals. And then if you start looking backwards, then it becomes very easy for you to frame an answer and you to also tell the officer what are your goals and objectives, right? So understanding your professional goals is very important because then it will create a complete roadmap backwards. It's something like, if you open up Google, so Google will not take you anywhere until you put the destination. So once you put the destination, then the Google will show you the route, right? Similarly, if you want to go and study in America, you must know what are your career goals, what are your professional goals, right? And in order to achieve that, if you start looking backwards, then you know that what program you want to enroll for, what are the subjects that would really help you, and then why have you chosen this college? The answers would then start becoming very easy if you understand your professional goals, right? So if you focus on the relevant knowledge, right, it is very important. Why this specific field, right? How does that help you achieve your career goals? If you aim to become, let's say that if you want to be a business analyst, right? So your focus has to be a program that teaches data analyst, business intelligence, decision-making strategies, right? Similarly, based on that, then you'll be choosing the right program, you know. So that right program will then take you to a career path which would be really, really specific for the industry. You must know what industries you will be coming back and working for, right? And then once you know your relevant knowledge, your program, then that's how it will help you improve on your skill development, you know. So if you want to be a manager, you know, or a person with technical skills, right? So that would make you, you know, with those kind of skill sets to achieve those kind of programs and those kind of goals that you have aimed for, right? Okay. So by tying your academic pursuit to your professional goals will create a seamless path, you know. So if you understand that you want to get into, you want to be a chef. So if you want to be a chef, you would understand what kind of program you want to, you know, go and enroll for. So understand your career first, right? Then it becomes much easier for the officer to resonate with you. Now, so I've showed these examples. Reason is like, you know, if you understand there's a problem, and if you understand you can find a solution. In order to find that solution, these kind of programs would really help you. So let's understand that, you know, when I wanted to go watch a movie, I had to drive down all the way to a movie hall, stand in the queue, and then buy a ticket, right? I may find the ticket for that particular show, or I may not. I may not even choose my seats, right? However, Book My Show identified that problem and found a solution by creating Book My Show. Similarly, with Blinkit or Zomato, if I had to, you know, go and take food, I had to go out, you know, to a particular restaurant, and I would only get that kind of food. But now, with the help of Swiggy and Zomato, we can order food accordingly, and similarly with Uber and Porter. So if you understand that there is a problem you've identified and you want to create some kind of a solution, and I would want to go and study in America so that I can get those tools to create that solution, that would really help, you know. So don't just go and give an answer, you know. Find out what are the problems. Let's say that, you know, you want to get into data science, right? But you want to come back and work with Amazon. So you understand that by data science you could really, you know, make better decisions, or Amazon could, you know, develop a software to make better decisions for the buyer, you know. So there's a solution. So when the officer says why this particular college, here the officer wants to understand the desired field of specialization that you want to go and study there. Don't just say that, you know, I want to go and study in this particular college because, you know, A, it's affordable, the weather is very good, or my friend suggested me. No, those are wrong answers, you know. You've got to talk about your own specialized field that you want to go and study there for, right? So based on that, then you would say that, you know, I did my shortlisting. In fact, I applied to 5 colleges. I've got 3 admits. Out of those 3 admits, I've chosen this particular college because I really like the way they have designed the course content. The curriculum really resonates with my career objectives. It is research oriented because research would give me an option to understand what's going to happen in the future, right? Then you can talk about the ranking, the professors. However, the most important thing is the content that matches the industry requirement, right? So choose the university which offers you the program which would help you achieve your goals. So what will you study in the US? Again, the officer really wants to understand the kind of subjects that you'll be choosing there in the first semester. Then how would you take it forward, right? And why have you opted for those programs? And those programs have to be, again, related to your career goals, right? And then this question comes, why US, right? So the first question is, why do you want to go and study in the US? And if the question comes in later, why US? So here the officer wants to understand, why not India, right? So you can talk about the quality of education in the US, you know, that the US education maintains the highest standards, it upgrades the curriculum, which is, you know, industry oriented. You get the faculties which are, you know, which are from the industry. They bring in a lot of industry knowledge, right? So by the time you complete your education, you'll be industry ready, right? Because there'll be a lot of CPT and OPT that goes into it. You can, understand and create your own programs over there, and have a mix of various programs in the US, because it's so flexible that you can not only choose your core but also your electives. So once again, how will you fund yourself? Even if you're getting 100% scholarship, or even if you've taken an education loan, like I said right in the beginning, the officer's objective is to see not just the availability, but to see how strong your family is financially, right? Always start your answer by saying that my family is going to fund me. We have a current annual income of so much. We have savings, investments worth so much, and property is worth so much. In addition to this, I've taken an education loan which covers my tuition fees. Or looking at my credentials, the college offered me a scholarship. So first talk about your social ties, your financial strength in India, and then the availability of funds. So that's how you need to structure your answer, right? So what are your future plans? So here the officer wants to understand whether you will come back to your home country or not, right? So here you got to talk about saying, so the industry in India is still growing, they're still at a nascent stage. With the US education, my career growth in India would be much bigger and better, because I'm looking at these positions once I return back. Okay. So you got to talk about, like, how the education in the US would impact the across industries with the artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? So they can really optimize the entire operations. You could also create personalized customer experiences, right? You will be experiencing all this in the US, and you can bring all these things here in India. So here in India, there's a lot of research. Okay. So once you complete your education, you could come back and contribute in bringing in those cutting edge research and development, those models here in India, and you would be then recognized as a professional in the industry once you return back, right? So it's very important to understand how will that impact the industry. What are the research and innovation opportunities that you'll get that you can bring here? And also, because it is so research oriented, and the entire curriculum is designed to match the industry requirement, so you would be preparing yourself for the future. You can mention all these things to the visa officer when you go in, right? And also give relevant examples that, if I go and study, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, I can come back and work with Google, because Google is also developing AI technology through DeepMind and Google Brains, right? And with the search of algorithm and personalized advertising, there will be a huge option for you to come back and give these kind of services with these companies, even like Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix. You can provide these relevant informations, right, to the visa officer. Also, if the officer says, would you like to work in the US? So let's understand he's talking about after you complete your studies and your OPT. If he's talking about OPT, so OPT is an integral part of the US education system, where every international students can do internships under the OPT to get some industry exposure. So you can tell the officer, I would like to take their advantage before coming back to India. Okay. So like I said, what if you're offered a job? You've got to talk about, like, how your professional growth in India would really, really be much better than what you would be getting in the US in terms of growth, right? So talk about your growth option, your recognition in India, right? So if I have to break down, you have to have two major things in your mind. Your reason to go, because you want to go and study there. So be very clear in what you tell the officer, what are your reasons of going and studying there. And then, of course, your reasons of coming back. So the officer will not ask you these questions specifically, but he expects that in your answers, he can understand your intent of studying and then returning back. Okay. So now that you are going to be ready for your appointments after creating your DS-160, paying the visa fees, paying the service fees. Service is Student Exchange Visitor Information System. Your $350 goes to the Department of Homeland Security. So when you're going for your BAC or your OFC or for your biometrics, the only thing that you need to carry is your passport, the old and the new, your visa appointment letter, your DS-160 confirmation page, your I-20, and a service fee receipt, right? No other document is required at the OFC. So do you need to sign the I-20? Well, you can sign the I-20 and you can mention the date of your visa interview. If you are under the age of 18, then your parents have to sign the I-20, otherwise they don't need to sign it. When you're going for your consular appointment, so all those documents that you had carried for your fingerprinting, they'll stamp it and return it back to you. And then you need to take all your financial papers, education documents, and work-related documents when you're going for your visa interview.